Well, so we have to do the discussions, and we told you that we're going to have a member of Parliament Committee on Local Government and Rural Development as well. And Mohammed Abdul Aziz is a member of Parliament for Myong, and he just won his primaries to be the MP elect again, MP candidate elect once again for the NDC in the Myong constituency for the parliamentary election that will be coming up in 2020. That's already next year. And already, I know that there's been excessive pressure on the presidential candidate of the party, former President John Dramani Mahama, to select a running mate. But we've had some swift responses as well. Good morning to you. And congratulations. We haven't met since your primary.
Yes, well, it's true. We haven't met. We had some phone call. I remember you called to congratulate me on my winning. That one I can't remember. And that makes you a good friend.
You are, yeah. Once it went well, everybody's happy. There has been an ongoing issue, and we've had some swift response from the Ghana Revenue Authority, in which there's been some concerns raised about why a facility to be used for an office has been hired from a member of the board. And I know you know that issue very well. And we had that response from a member of the Customs Division of the GRA, who has come in swiftly to say that it's value for money. The response also says that the decision to take up that structure has since resulted in positive yield in collection of revenue within the period since they located the office of the GRA to that point. It's close to just the Agbogloshi market. You know Agbogloshi market?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's first your response to that subject about conflict of interest situation in that transaction?
Well, and good morning again. Good morning to our viewers, especially my constituents back at Myong. And it's a very worrying situation. Like you clearly indicated, it borders on a conflict of interest. I think that Article 294 or 296, I'm not too sure, speaks to the issues of conflict of interest. And so, and we are all worried about the issues of conflict of interest because it largely borders on corruption. The tendency for people to loot the state when they are engaged in conflict of interest is very high. That seemed to be the only motive why people would engage themselves in issues of conflict of interest. So, for instance, when a board member wants to rent his or her property to an institution that he or she is a board member, it is only proper that full disclosures are made, that you make the board to understand that this is your property. You would have to recuse yourself in the decision that would be taken to rent that facility. In this case, it doesn't appear that that was done. It's just recently that we have uncovered that a board member rented his own facility to GRA. Now the question that arises is, was there value for money? Could they have rented a different property at a lower rate? You know, and so this clearly is not a good story. I think that the trust should be interested in this matter because they have the mandate to deal with issues of conflict of interest. I think they pay close to 50,000 Ghana cedis for the property a month. And so you ask yourself if what they will use to pay for a year or two would not be able to build them same facility or similar one. And so it is worrying. But under President Akufo-Addo and the NPP, this should not come to us as a surprise. I remember my uncle and senior colleague, Honorable A.B.A. Fuseni, says that to accuse the NPP of corruption is like accusing the dog of barking. You know, it is corruption is part of their political DNA, and you have witnessed the daily scandals that they are recording, and so we are not surprised. It's as if to suggest that they are all convinced that they will be leaving power 2021. And so the attitude is like, let us grab and go.
What do you mean by they are recording daily scandal? What do you mean by that?
Roland, you are in the media, and I would want to believe that you follow events more than I do as a very renowned journalist. You know that even though the MPP did not promise us a scandal every day or every week, no week passes in this country without a scandal. You are aware.
Those are media speculation. And not substantiated most.
No, you see, as for corruption, it can only start with an allegation. And sometimes when an allegation is made, and you can see visible and demonstrable evidence to that corruption, to the extent that the person has not been prosecuted in court, you can only use the word allegation. But for instance, in the issue of PDS, even government itself, the Minister for Energy himself has indicated that some fraud was perpetuated on the state. If a minister will say that a fraud has been perpetuated on the state, fraud, I'm told by lawyers, vitiates a contract, and yet that contract is still in effect. In the case of Ameri, you had the president himself indicate that he was misled, and so there are very visible, demonstrable, evidence to all the allegations that has been leveled against this.
Ameri is a scandal.
Oh, Ameri, if not for the vigilance of the minority members on the Energy Committee, Ghana would have been paying some extra 800 million to $1 billion US on what they call the innovation deal that they brought. But I
thought that government has come out clearly, and through the Ministry of Information, we've had it also, the substantive next Minister of Energy also come to clarify all the issues.
Roland, I'm saying that for the vigilance of the minority members on the Committee of Mines and Energy, it would have been a done deal, because this was an agreement that the president gave an executive approval to. It never went to cabinet for approval. It was brought to Parliament, and our members.
So your point is that the scandals are just too many.
They are just too many.
In your view,
we're promised.
Is it not because you're in the opposition party? So definitely that would be the reason.
We are not in government, and when these allegations come, we can only share them with the Ghanaian public. We never had any hands in the issue of Ameri deal. We have no hands in the PDS scandal. We have no hands in what's happening at the National Youth Authority. And so I'm saying that with the issue of the conflict of interest at the Ghana Revenue Authority, it just demonstrates to you how corrupt this MPP government is. President Akufo-Addo, prior to becoming the president, had promised to come and protect the public purse. Roland, if you are convinced deep inside your heart that what President Akufo-Addo is a protection of the public purse, you can tell me. I mean,
is it a rhetoric or is it
a rhetoric question?
Okay.
Could you imagine some of these things happening under President Mahama?
There are lots of things that happened under the administration of President John Dramani Mahama.
I'm not saying that
we had the bus branding scandal.
I'm not saying that
was initially denied and subsequently had to come in.
Roland, I'm not saying that
to eat the humble pie.
There were no allegations of corruption under President Mahama. But remember that under President Mahama, anytime some of these allegations came, he never investigated himself and cleared them like President Akufo-Addo. He has turned himself into a clearing agent at the Flagstaff House.
But that is not a fair comment.
It is.
It's not
Let me give you a very clear example.
Please do.
On the issue of the Circle interchange, the allegation was that the price was inflated. What the government of President Mahama did was to engage KP, there's this international audit firm, KPMG, right, to audit the transaction. This is not a government itself investigating itself. They issued a report that cleared the government of President Mahama and the NDC. This is not what we are seeing today. Today, when there is an allegation against members of this government, the president would institute a committee to investigate. And sometimes, even before the committee comes out with a report, they are cleared. A very good example is the visa racketeering scandal that hit the Ministry of Youth and Sports.
We had a committee that was put in place,
and then
subsequently we've had investigations undertaken that has cleared certain individuals, including the deputy minister at the time, Pius Enal Hajide, who currently is a deputy minister for information. But in the meantime, let me go on to the line. We'll speak to anti-corruption crusader Adam Sananu. Adam Sananu, good morning to you. But in relation to the perceived conflict of interest situation that may be arising and the subsequent responses by officials of the Ghana Revenue Authority over a decision taken to hire or rent a premises to be used for an office just close to Agbogloshi, but that premises belonging to a board member. Could it be a situation of a clear conflict of interest situation?
Yes, it could be a situation of clear conflict of interest. And let me say that I have said this on other platforms, that conflict of interest is quite a technical issue. On the face of it, public officers are not supposed to place themselves in positions where they may have a potential conflict of interest. What it means is that you must be mindful and intentional in avoiding any situations or circumstances that may pose the context where someone may say that you have engaged yourself in conflict of interest. To that extent, therefore, if you are part of an institution that provides goods and services, it is your responsibility to ensure that in no way can someone say that you gained from those goods or services, or you had the potential of influencing processes towards getting you to benefit from those goods and services. And that is why it is much better for anyone who is working with a particular institution to say, me, myself, my family, and people around me, I will not have you come anywhere near this. When I'm done and gone, you can now come and engage processes to have goods and services. It's just that understanding of the fact that the undue taking an advantage of a situation to benefit from it leaves a certain impression about the integrity and honesty of the person, to the extent that you may even have influenced and gotten over and above what other people may have gotten if they went through the same process. So that's the context.
To many people, this will be untenable that somebody who has had a line of business, indeed engages in a line of business, and will be told because that person is occupying a public position or a state of authority, should not undertake any business at all.
Unfortunately, they are wrong in that. That is the global standard. The global standard is that if you offer yourself for public service, you are expected to have ethical standards of the highest level. And those ethical standards globally demand that do not engage in any activities or be seen to engage in any activities that may give you an undue advantage. So to the extent that you offer yourself for public office, your own understanding must be, I will not be able to allow my businesses or people related to it to benefit from that business or goods and service. It may seem from a business perspective to sound wrong, but that is the ethical standard, and we cannot deviate from it or begin to, dilute that standard, because what it does is that you then have people going to public office, and then it becomes me, myself, family, and friends, and we make sure we benefit, we cream off everything, we take from the public purse, and we exclude others who ought to have had an equal opportunity in the process. The risk is that people in those positions will exclude other ordinary citizens from having equal opportunity because they have influence. Once they are sitting there, they have influence.
Well, just be on the line. Now, Mr. Abdul Aziz, you also signed with him. What would be your varied opinion, if you have any, in relation to that? Does it mean that Roland Walker, I'm appointed to a board or have a public office, and as a result of that, because there's perceived global standard and there's a moral reasoning to it, I'm a business person or I engage in some form of entrepreneurship, so my businesses in the line should not have any relationship to do with any government authority or agency at all, or even directly to the institution that I'm appointed to or I work with?
Roland, I agree perfectly with him. In fact, what we are saying is that if you are a member of a board of GRA, and GRA wants to rent a property that belongs to you, standards will require you to make full disclosures and recuse yourself in the decision that would rent that property. That is the worst situation. Just tell me if you are part of a board that takes a decision about your property, you can only seek to earn more. You have some level of influence that could influence the rate at which GRA would rent the property, especially that you do not make full disclosures on that matter. And so it borders on conflict of interest. That also would border on issues of corruption, you know, looting the state for personal gain. Under this circumstance, what I would advise is that immediately that contract should be abrogated, some investigations should be conducted, and if there was no value for money, let some monies be refunded. If there is criminality established, criminal prosecutions must follow. That would be my advice at this stage. I just referred you to, I'm not too sure, Article 294 or 296 says that a public officer should not engage himself in issues of conflict of interest. There is a code of conduct for public officers. There's a code of conduct for public officers. All these documents frowns on conflict of interest and corruption. And so, but like I indicated, under President Akufo-Addo, this doesn't come as a surprise to some of us, because we have seen more visible corrupt deals under President Akufo-Addo than
Mr. Abdul Aziz. That's a political statement. And
it is not.
And that's very speculative. But
in any case, I'm not a pastor here. I sit here representing my party and my constituents. I don't represent any Christian group or Muslim group. And so
that's a very biased comment, I think, in my opinion.
It's not biased.
But let's move on to the phone line. Mr. Senano.
Yes, sir.
We've had a response from an official of the GRA, and tacitly saying that since that office was hired, and then we've had staff, at least the one at the Agbogbloshe end, revenue collection or mobilization, all within the overall objective of the GRA to meet targets, have since been met. That's a good justification, is that not?
No, absolutely not. And it worries me because we have a number of these kind of after-the-fact situations where you are finding justifications that take away from the integrity of the process that was followed. In the appointment of the GRA chair, we're also worried that, look, there have been issues and questions from Maritime. That's the current GRA boss. I don't know whether he has started work here. And those had not been cleared. The transport minister has said there will be an investigation, and yet he was being appointed. And we say there's a risk when you do that. You can see that the PPA boss that currently we are having these issues on, there were issues in the past. If the due diligence on the integrity issues had been handled well, we would not be where we are today with this scandal. Again, now we have this situation where we are saying that, oh, but we are making money. No, that is not good enough. I mean, it begins to create a society where we have no respect for integrity, and we think that it is just avoid and following due process, do what it is, and at the end of the day, create a justification. We need to even examine the fact they have put out there as to how much more money they have made. How much more have they spent on this place compared to other places, and what would have been the net balance? That is not acceptable. It does not become a good basis on which to say that we did not do what was right. The individual involved, we say corruption is the abuse of entrusted power for personal gain. That word of abuse of entrusted power is why it is not as if you were appointed, you accept it. So anybody going to public office must know that you are accepting to play a role for the citizens, and that role demands that you should not put yourself in these situations. Full stop. You can either decide to resign and allow your businesses to get more contracts from government if that is it. But the best case scenario as far as conflict of interest is concerned, and indeed the standard now is potential conflict of interest, not just conflict of interest. If you want to use that standard of potential conflict of interest, she should not even have allowed the office to proceed to say, we are going to keep this property and use it for the institution where you are on the board. That creates problems from good governance. It creates a lot of problems for good governance.
But somebody would say, and if you look at what the commentary has been, that what you just alluded to is just pure issue of morality. It's just a moral reasoning.
No, there's nothing. It's not moral about
it. That because I occupy a certain position and for the good sense of it and for public good, I should not be engaged in that sort of transaction at all.
No, it is not. It's a good governance issue. It's not just about morality. And that's why there is a standard. It is something that has been observed over the years. So when we talk about good governance, whether it's corporate governance or not, we say to the extent that you accept particular position to serve, you must not put yourself in the position where the integrity of your actions will be questioned, or indeed you yourself will be tempted to take advantage of that power which people have entrusted in you. Because ultimately power resides in the hands of people. Article 35(1). So you are taking the people's power, and you are taking advantage of the fact that we found you suitable, creditable to put in a particular position. And if you're not careful, you begin to take advantage of the fact that we say go and supervise, and begin to amass for yourself things that ordinarily you would not have gotten. We don't want that. We want equity to be there. So it's not just about morality. It's about good governance. It's about ensuring equity, and it's about protecting the public purse.
Well, please stay with us. We're in for the long haul. So as we're doing that, it's part of technology, and we'll do these discussions comprehensively. Let's move on to the next issue. The Member of Parliament for Myong as well as Adam Senan. And this time we go to the premises or the offices of the National Youth Authority. Already we know that there have been 3 letters that have been issued, and subsequently on the dismissal of the chief executive. One said he was the deputy chief executive. One also said he was acting for the foremost issues. But the chief executive, 2 of his deputies have all been made to go out of office. They've been sacked in the first place. But it's all because of a related issue about contract that was given to an entity for training, and it is perceived that it didn't go through due process. You follow that too?
I do.
Mr. Abdul Aziz.
I do. And when you say perceived, the accused persons have not denied it. And so even though they have not been...
I say perceived because we've not gone through the normal processes of investigating and then drawing any conclusion as to who is guilty or not. Or whether even that...
Roland, I agree with you.
Great.
But let me just give you some example and let's see if that would fit in. If you find a dead body and someone admits that he or she murders that person, you will now be seeking to find out if the person was admitted guilt of murdering that person is mentally sound. In this case, the people involved have not denied it. The deputy coordinators have spoken to that matter. And so it has gone beyond mere allegation. That's why I say that almost all the allegations of corruption that has been leveled against officials of this regime, have some visible evidence, some ample evidence to prove that, yes, there are real acts of corruption. It is worrying that would have some of these things happening at the National Youth Authority. This institution is very critical to our national development. This is an institution that is required by law to empower the youth of this country, the future leaders of this country, either in terms of vocational skills to drive the laws that would empower the youth of this country so that we can be able to hold the fort tomorrow if you have some of these things happening. And interestingly, these are the people who wake up every morning and go to radio and TV stations and run down President Mahama and the NDC, still insisting on some baseless allegations of corruption that was leveled against us. One by one, almost all the young guys in the MPP are having their fair share of the corrupt allegations in this regime. And it is worrying. How can you imagine spending almost 10,000 Ghana cedis to train just one person on how to fix street lights, just the bulb, and you spend as much as 10,000 Ghana cedis? The contract to award that contract never went through the procurement processes. Can you just imagine this? That a contract to the tune of some 4.5 million Ghana cedis, you awarded without going through any competitive procurement process at all, and has paid 1.8 million Ghana cedis already. Can you just imagine this in your office? And yet you call yourselves as Democrats and people who are in to protect the public purse. I just can't imagine this. In fact, one of the deputies has just indicated that he advised the chief executive against it, and he ignored his advice and went ahead. And that was why he refused to append his signature on the payment vouchers. And so clearly, it tells you that even at their own level, there was some level of disagreement. Some people wanted to insist on the right thing to be done, but someone was looking at the monetary value that will come to him.
That's speculative.
I mean, that could only be that could be the
that's
only
speculative.
Motivation. That could be the only motivation. That even your deputies,
Mr. Abdul Aziz, that's speculative.
I agree with you. Even your deputies would advise you against it. You are aware of the procurement law in this country. You have a procurement officer. You ignore all these processes and go ahead to award that contract to a company, and they don't even know where that company is operating from. No one can point to a single person that this is the gentleman that they have trained. And so clearly, and I don't know, as usual, I can bet you that the president is going to institute an investigative committee, and at the end of the day, no one is going to face prosecution. Let me give you a very good example. I mean, people have always referred to the issue of the bus branding. I'm not saying that it was a very fine deal. It lacked the finesse that was required. But in the case of the bus branding, a committee was set, they investigated and said that, look, this bus branding could have been procured at, say, 5 Ghana cedis and not 10 Ghana cedis. And monies were refunded. Look, regrettably, I must use this one as an example. Our senior colleague Abu Gapile today is in jail. It was the government of President Mahama that started the prosecution. Let me also give you another example.
No, that's okay. But now let's go to Adam Senanu, and that's why he's joining us for the conversation. And now, Mr. Senanu, as a governance person, and yesterday we're having this debate on a platform that I belong to on WhatsApp, and there were even lawyers and some of you governance people there as well. And the whole argument came to a head that it is just an action of impropriety on the part of again speculatively, on the part of those appointees, or let's say the chief executive, of just not going through due process in approving a certain transaction or action to be taken for this training activity. Is that the case, or would you agree to that?
Well, Roland, as Aziz was speaking, I mean, my mind went back to 2014, 2015, when I was on the JIDA panel. And after 3 months of investigation, we were about to submit the report, but we realized we hadn't managed to speak to some key people. One of them included the former Minister of Youth and Sports, Kofi Humado, on a particular issue about some, again, it was procurement, and when we had done the calculation, the good people of Ghana were being charged over 1,000% per annum, which thought was incredible. And we're wondering why he would append his signature when even we had officers, and we had a document that showed that some of his regional coordinators had said this thing should not pass. Eventually, we managed to get Mr. Kofi Humado. And you wouldn't believe it. The man had files upon files that we didn't find in the ministry. And when he pushed documents to us, unfortunately that day, none of us was fast enough to take pictures, because he said, I'm keeping this for my own defense. We found that he had notations of instructions, of indications that he's been instructed to do ABC. And then he had sent his documents to the Attorney General for advice, and he had also advised, and he had acted accordingly. So whilst on the surface of it, it didn't make sense. Why would you go ahead with this where clearly it would not benefit us? The man was covered. So what I'm saying is this. I agree with everyone who says that ideally a proper, full and comprehensive investigation which is open, so that we all know exactly what transpired, who gave who instruction, and on which basis. Are all 3 of them culpable, or is just one? Are there some people who actually actively stood against it? Should their names be impugned because of this? So I'm saying that on the surface of it, I mean, these are lessons learned. We're part of the committee. We had finished. We had our draft report ready to go out. It's just our lawyer kept insisting, you know what, let's make sure we get to speak to all these past ministers. And the man had files which were nowhere to be found in the ministry. That would have given us a lot of headache if a report came out and any court or legal issues came on. So I'm just saying that we need to be circumspect. On the surface of it, the chief executive has taken decisions. But what kind of chief executive, knowing the terrain and knowing the particular institution he's in and the history of that institution, will still post it? Isn't there sometimes, because sometimes they are sacrificing people. I mean, we interviewed Abu Gapele. It was part of that thing. If you ask me whether Abu Gapele is the right person to be holding the crime on his neck at this time, I'll tell you no. I think that there are others who ought to have been there themselves. So I think my point is well made, I'm sure, Roland.
Well, that also covers the chief executive and his actions then, if they are to be true, of the National Youth Authority.
Absolutely, Roland. I'm saying that sometimes there are people higher than the chief executives you are seeing who are influencing and causing this to happen. At least in the case I've narrated, we were just saved by the fact that we saw this one. And he had the file. Kofi Umado had the files, he had the documents, he had the dates, it was there. I mean, it just tells you that it's a lesson for me in history that, look, on the surface of it, we had drawn the conclusion, we had our final report. It just took 2 hours for this man to prove to us that, look, sometimes if you are in politics, they don't say everything, but they may be protecting themselves. There may be other people who are being protected by sacrificing some people. And then you don't get to the bottom of it, and we don't have the change we want to see. So I agree that, look, there may be some considerations involved, but at which level and who is influencing what? You always need a thorough investigation.
Right. Let me read this to you. And before I come to Abdul Aziz, Member of Parliament for Myong, let me read this to you. And this one is coming from the public page of the Deputy Chief Executive of Authority, who has also been given the sack since all the speculative issues came to the public light. And he says, as the schedule officer responsible for approving payment vouchers, I refuse to ever approve any payment intended to that company, and the company is in bracket. I did not approve the initial payment that has been made of 1.8 million. I actually stopped the payment voucher covering that transaction. Now, let me ask you as a governance expert, if you have management team members who raise issues on a transaction that seem to have been getting the nod or the directive of the head of that management, that also, well, speculatively raises issues about disagreement over that transaction among the management team members. Is that not it?
Yes, it does. It does. And it is one of the red flags for me because I'm wondering, why is somebody like that part of the dismissed person? Is it true that he is trying to escalate? What are the structures in place from NYA and its board to have dealt with this? I need to check whether it's a board or it's a commission or a committee, a steering committee that's supposed to have. What were the internal processes to make sure that things like these are being resolved? And that is where the learning is. Because you may have people who actively are standing up against such actions, are trying to find ways of expressing and ensuring that the right thing is done. But do we have the systems to protect them? So I'll be really interested in knowing when he refused to and he tried to escalate, at what level did he escalate? What are the structures? How did they...
Well, we've lost Mr. Adamson and Uda. But as I come back, same question to you. The issues being raised by the deputy, who is now out of office due to the letter that has directly been coming to him for him to vacate that office, also gives a cause to worry.
Yeah. The man says that he has the duty to approve payment vouchers. Before the accounts office can effect payment, someone would have to give approval for the payment of those monies. And so he advised against it. They insisted on he approving, and he declined. And so they went ahead to pay. And that is where sometimes you can also question the professional integrity of our public servants. I have been a finance officer before, and if I get a request for payment without the approving authority approving it, I wouldn't effect the payment. And so sometimes you want to question how professional that our public servants are. But sometimes I can also understand the weight of public officers like politicians. So it is worrying. Roland, my worry is this. this is not the only scandal that we have recorded in this month or this week. They are countless. They are countless, and that is worrying. The president seems to have the approach of SIC, suspend, investigate, and clear. And so it normally will come in phases. Once they suspend this person, the next day they will initiate investigations, and then the last lapse will be to clear the person. And so either you are talking of PDS, you are talking of National Youth Authority or whatever, I say the president has a policy of SIC, suspend, investigate, and clear. And that is a worrying thing. He should learn from President Mahama, who had to engage international organizations to do audits of all allegations of corruption against him and his government. And that's the only way we can have some trust and confidence in the report. And what's even worrying is that sometimes you don't even get to see the reports of these committees that they set up. Let me just give a very good example, and that's worrying to all of us. PDS, a committee we're told was put in place to investigate the deal. Roland,
just a man.
Who are the members of the committee?
Have you asked and you've not been told?
People have asked. Who? People have asked that question on several occasions within the media space.
Who did you ask?
Oh, do you expect to walk to the Minister of Energy?
But you're a member of Parliament. You can walk to the appropriate so that you don't come on TV and speculate.
But Roland, it only requires of good governance that when you set up a committee, you tell us who the committee members are, the duration of their work, and their terms of reference. Is it not surprising that under President Akufo-Addo, you hear of a committee and no one knows the committee members? Isn't that worrying? And so it is only an attempt to clear those people, and I won't be surprised tomorrow if this National Youth Authority Chief Executive Officer is cleared. They are the second stage of their processes where they say they are doing investigations, and then they will be clear. In fact, text messages are now emerging, even among the board members. There are WhatsApp chats that are now emerging, people making some financial demands on some other people. And so it is a cabal. It's a cabal. And like I said, ABA said that when you accuse the MPP of corruption, it's like accusing a dog of barking. It is part of their political DNA. They must learn and learn fast from the good works of President Mahama.
Mohammed Abdul Aziz, that's a political statement. It's just to gain some positive public opinion. I think that has to be ignored.
And, Roland.
Yes, true.
Why?
Mr. Adams, no. So I want him to have a last word. We'll call him. We'll call him.
That my comment should be ignored.
Oh, but it's a political statement. It's not fair. It's not fair to the Akufo-Addo government. You claim that the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is somebody who clears people of all crimes or speculated accusations of corruption. Well, that is not a fair statement, don't you think?
Let me take your position just for 1 minute.
It's not my position.
No, I say let me
just
let me pose a question and let's see how you proceed to answer it. In the case of the visa racketeering at the Ministry of Sports, my good friend, the Deputy Minister for Information now, who was at the ministry and was in charge of that Olympic Games, was cleared, true or false? He was cleared by the president.
There was a proper investigation.
Have we seen the report from the CID?
No, please.
Have we seen the report?
There was a proper investigation that was undertaken.
By who?
Of course, we've had the CID undertaken.
And you have seen the report?
I've not cited the report. It's been reported to us. We've had the Minister for Information.
Is that standard?
Who is the official spokesperson of government, giving us the indication. We've not cited it. Now, I'll take the minister's word for it until I cite.
And that should be ignored.
No.
The minister's words should be taken.
What you said was that the president was a corruption scandal accusation clearing president. That's what you said. And I said that statement should be ignored.
Cash for seats.
No way.
Did he clear them before the committee's work or not?
No, less than.
So since then,
we've had the deputy.
Did he clear them without the report or not?
We've had the now Deputy Minister of Information, who was deputy at the time, cleared of any wrongdoing.
By who? Where is the report? Isn't that worrying?
But
look, Roland, it's not about the NDC.
That is a good question to ask.
It's not about the NDC or President Mahama.
But that is a good question to ask.
It's about good governance in this country. It's about value for money.
I do agree.
It's about fighting corruption.
We need a report to substantiate
some of the
official comments that are coming from
some of the questions that the media ask to President Mahama and the NDC. If you were to apply same to this regime, they wouldn't survive for a day. How can we imagine?
Which questions?
Oh, I've just told you a very classical example is you setting up
a Mr. Adamson back on the line.
We don't have the report, and yet you clear the person. And you think that's not worrying?
Okay, let's move on.
What is good for goose is good for Uganda.
Okay, so now let's talk on the last issue before we go. There have been ongoing attacks of African migrants.
Yes.
In South Africa.
Yes.
We're told that so far we've not had any Ghanaian who has been a victim of any casualty. Yeah. So far, but of course, I'm sure some have been beaten nonetheless. Yeah. Subsequently, we've also had the killing of at least some Nigerians. Yeah. Just as a member of parliament and as an ordinary Ghanaian, also representing a certain constituency of our country, this population. The
constituency.
Of course. What would you say about the attacks of African migrants? And then subsequently, what actions need to be taken by governments like ours and others on the continent?
Regrettable that in the 21st century, we are seeing this in South Africa. A very shameful act, if you ask me. It doesn't push our agenda of African unity forward. It's a threat to the continental unity. A lot of efforts are being made to unite this continent, at least at the trade level. Recently, there was this intercontinental trade fair that has even come to establish the headquarters in Accra here. Yeah,
there's an agreement. Exactly. That we will have to trade among ourselves.
Exactly, so exactly. The headquarters
African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Exactly. And so all these are efforts that the heads of states are making to be able to see Africa as one continent, one people with a common destiny. And so to see some of these things happening in South Africa is regrettable. This is not the first time. I think somewhere in 2018 or 17, there were some there were similar acts, and I think that we should all condemn that. I expect the South African government to take steps to protect lives and properties, especially that of foreigners. That is very critical for them to do. And our government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, should also liaise with our consulate in South Africa to secure lives and properties of Ghanaians. That is most important to us. I hear there have been some reprisal attacks in Nigeria on South African investments. MTN, ShopRite, and MultiChoice have all been attacked. We don't want to see a similar thing happen in Ghana. Let's see what the South African government can do, whilst our government, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also seeks to protect lives and properties of Ghanaians. That is very, very essential. And let us continue to work for a united Africa, at least if not at the political level, at the business level, at the economic level. That's very, very important.
Yeah, a good comment from a good member of parliament. Oh, you sound like a diplomat.
This one, I'm not doing politics.
Yeah, but it's because it's not political. So
but I'm
you decided to.
Member.
The member of parliament from Myong has been with us, and Mohammed Abdul Aziz is a member of parliament and also a member of Parliament's Committee on Local Government and Rural Development. Which other committees are you a member of?
The Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee of Parliament. I'm also a member, a friend to the Public Accounts Committee too. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.